Steve Irwin spent his life protecting his family from danger. Snakes, crocodiles, cameras, headlines. But nearly 20 years after his death, the one thing he could never protect his daughter from finally pushed the Irwin family to the edge in public. Terri Irwin struggled to finish a sentence. Robert suddenly went quiet in front of reporters. And fans everywhere started asking the same question. What was really happening with Bindi Irwin behind the scenes? It all unfolded on a warm night in Las Vegas during the 3rd annual Steve Irwin Gala at the Bellagio. The ballroom had been transformed into a tribute to Australia Zoo, complete with khaki decorations, roaming animals, and conservation supporters packed wall to wall. Robert Irwin arrived smiling beside his mother Terri, fresh off the massive success of Dancing with the Stars. But there was one detail nobody could ignore. Bindi's chair at the family table sat empty for the 2nd year in a row. Before dinner had even started, reporters surrounded Terri and Robert with questions. Where was Bindi? Why wasn't she there? Terri answered gently, explaining that Bindi was recovering well, but long-distance travel had become difficult for her. Then she said something that instantly exploded online. She admitted it was actually easier for Bindi to stay home feeding crocodiles at Australia Zoo than fly to Las Vegas. And suddenly, the entire mood changed. Because what kind of pain makes someone choose crocodiles over a plane ride? That one sentence carried far more weight than most people realized. Feeding crocodiles at Australia Zoo is not some quiet afternoon chore. The Crocoseum is a massive arena built by Steve Irwin himself, the same place where his memorial service was held after his death in 2006. Bindi would rather stand in front of giant saltwater crocodiles than sit through an international flight. But why? Robert quickly stepped in, explaining that Australia Zoo runs across huge conservation grounds with hundreds of staff members depending on the family. He praised Bindi for holding everything together while the rest of the family traveled overseas. He smiled while saying it, but something underneath that smile felt heavier. Fans could sense it immediately, because the truth was far more painful than anyone expected. For more than a decade, Bindi had been fighting a private medical battle. A battle she hid from the world while cameras followed her everywhere. Back in 2023, she finally revealed she had been suffering from endometriosis for over 10 years. Endless pain. Endless tests. Endless doctor visits with no answers. She shared a hospital photo online and opened up about years of agony most people around her never even knew existed. But what doctors discovered during surgery shocked even longtime supporters. Specialist Dr. Tamer Kin removed 37 endometriosis lesions during her first major operation. He also found a painful cyst that had attached one of her ovaries to her body wall. And just when fans thought she was finally recovering, everything got worse again. Much worse. In the spring of 2025, the condition returned aggressively. Ironically, it happened during the exact same Steve Irwin Gala in Las Vegas where Bindi was expected to appear beside her family. At first, she tried to push through the pain anyway. Robert later revealed she wanted to attend the event no matter what. But doctors stepped in with devastating news. Her appendix needed emergency surgery immediately. Within hours, Bindi flew from Las Vegas to New York for another operation. Then came the heartbreaking update from her hospital bed. Surgeons had removed 14 more endometriosis lesions. Her appendix was gone. A painful hernia connected to childbirth had been repaired as well. Altogether, doctors had removed 51 lesions across multiple surgeries. 51. And suddenly, Terri's careful comments about challenging travel made far more sense. By August, Bindi finally shared some hopeful news. She told followers she could function normally again without feeling like she might faint or throw up from pain every day. She said she was finally starting to recognize herself again. But even then, recovery remained fragile. And that fragile recovery was exactly what Terri was trying to protect when she left Bindi at home during the 2026 gala. But that wasn't the emotional moment that truly broke the family open in public. What happened next hit even harder. As reporters shifted the conversation away from health concerns, they brought up a much lighter topic. Robert had apparently started joking about getting Terri onto the next season of Dancing with the Stars. Fans loved the idea instantly. When asked about it, Terri laughed and said she would review the petition and respond in 5 to 7 business days. The entire carpet burst into laughter. Robert grinned beside her like a son completely committed to the joke. But underneath the humor was something deeper nobody expected. Robert explained that neither he nor Bindi ever imagined they could dance before joining the show. Yet both ended up becoming huge successes. He joked that Steve Irwin had absolutely no rhythm at all, meaning the dance talent clearly came from Terri's side of the family. Everyone laughed again. Then Terri's expression suddenly softened. She admitted Bindi once described Dancing with the Stars as the closest thing to flying she had ever experienced. Free. Euphoric. Completely different from the pain she had been carrying for years. And in that moment, the conversation stopped feeling like a joke. It became something emotional. Something personal. Because the roots of Robert's campaign for his mother actually began months earlier during one unforgettable night on live television. Back in October 2025, Robert competed in Dedication Night on Dancing with the Stars. Every celebrity had to honor someone important in their life.
Robert chose Terri.
Sitting on a couch during rehearsals, he struggled through tears while talking about losing his father at just 2 years old. As he grew older, he began realizing how impossible Terri's job must have been after Steve's death. She had to raise 2 grieving children while carrying one of the most famous conservation legacies in the world completely on her shoulders. Then came the dance itself. Robert performed an emotional contemporary routine inspired by Tarzan music. Halfway through the performance, Terri walked onto the stage in a bright yellow dress. Robert lifted her into the air, spun her around, and collapsed into her arms as the music swelled. The judges openly cried. The audience cried. Even viewers at home admitted they were overwhelmed. But the most heartbreaking moment came afterward. Terri broke down during rehearsal footage and confessed that after Steve died, smiling again felt almost impossible. Then she said something fans still haven't forgotten. She told producers that Robert had it backwards when he thanked her for lifting him up after Steve's death. Because in reality, she said, her children were the reason she managed to get out of bed every morning at all. And somehow, the next dance became even more emotional. Weeks later, Robert was assigned a performance inspired by Bindi's own legendary freestyle from her 2015 victory on Dancing with the Stars. The routine had originally been dedicated to Steve Irwin. The pressure was enormous. When the dance finally aired, Bindi herself walked onto the floor at the end of the performance and embraced Robert and his partner, Whitney Carson. Then old footage of Steve holding baby Robert appeared across the ballroom floor beneath them. Robert completely broke down. He dropped to his knees as the audience stood in silence. Judges wiped away tears. The performance earned the first perfect score of the season. Bruno Tonioli called it poetic. Derek Huff described Robert as a beacon of joy for a new generation. Even longtime host Tom Bergeron praised how much Robert had grown. But behind the scenes, nobody realized just how much pain Robert himself was hiding. By the finale, his body was barely holding together. After weeks of brutal rehearsals, Robert had developed a serious rib injury that made breathing painful. His partner Whitney Carson later admitted they were physically exhausted. Some lifts had to be removed from routines because his body simply could not handle them anymore. Yet somehow, Robert kept going. The finale became one of the biggest television events of the year. Millions watched as Robert delivered 3 massive performances in one night. Then came the final announcement. Robert Irwin had won the Mirrorball Trophy. The crowd exploded. Terri cried openly in the audience. Bindi stood beside her husband Chandler Powell and their daughter Grace Warrior cheering for Robert. And when Robert grabbed the microphone afterward, his first words were about his sister. He told the audience Bindi had once warned him the show would change his life forever. Turns out, she was right. The victory also made history. Robert became the youngest male winner the show had ever seen. He and Bindi became the first siblings ever to both win Mirrorball trophies. Terri later posted an emotional message online praising Robert's kindness and passion while officially welcoming Whitney into the Irwin family. Fans couldn't get enough of it. But 4 months later, back in Las Vegas, another emotional question would stop the family in their tracks. A reporter asked what Steve Irwin would think if he could see all of this today. Terri answered first with her usual warmth and humor. She joked Steve would probably be shocked they were standing in Las Vegas of all places. Then Robert gave an answer that instantly spread across the internet. He said every single day strangers still approach him to share stories about how Steve changed their lives. 20 years later, his father's message somehow felt stronger than ever. Then Robert quietly shifted the attention back to Terri. He said keeping Steve's legacy alive for 2 decades took incredible strength. And he gave full credit for that strength to the woman standing beside him. Terri laughed through tears and joked that Robert had one thing Steve never did: the willingness to take his shirt off for wildlife conservation. The room erupted again. But underneath the laughter sat something much heavier. The family knows another emotional milestone is coming. September 4th will mark 20 years since Steve Irwin died after being struck by a stingray barb at Bat Reef. The anniversary has been hanging over the family for months. And Robert recently revealed just how differently he and Bindi carry that grief. During a CNN interview with Anderson Cooper, Robert explained he feels closest to his father during remote crocodile expeditions deep in the Australian wilderness. Sometimes, he said, a strange warmth suddenly surrounds him out there. Like Steve is still nearby somehow. Then Robert admitted something deeply personal. He said Bindi's grief feels different because she had more time with their father than he did. For her, the loss feels sharp and painful. For him, it feels more like a constant weight pressing down quietly over time. Then he shared a story nobody expected. On one of his first crocodile research expeditions, Robert captured a massive crocodile only to discover it had been tagged years earlier by Steve himself. Robert described it as a sign from his father. A reminder that Steve's presence still follows the family everywhere they go. And maybe that is why the Irwins continue pushing forward no matter how difficult things become. Through grief, through illness, through public pressure, through years of healing that still are not fully complete. Steve Irwin's voice still echoes through Australia's zoo every single day. In the Crocoseum, in Robert's work, in Terri's strength, and in Bindi's fight to reclaim her life one step at a time.